Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
Anders Hove being spotted on the set of General Hospital has set off a storm of speculation, anticipation, and excitement among daytime fans, particularly those who have long followed the twisted and unforgettable storylines involving the character of Caesar Faison. Over the years, Faison has carved out a place for himself in soap opera history as one of the most sinister, layered, and enigmatic villains to ever terrorize the canvas. His menacing presence, his unhealthy obsessions, and his unrelenting drive to control those around him made him both hated and beloved, depending on which side of the viewing spectrum a fan fell on. For some, he was a chilling nightmare, a character whose very appearance promised chaos and destruction. For others, he was the kind of antagonist that makes soaps irresistible, unpredictable, and endlessly entertaining. And with Hove's name now linked again to GH, one question hangs in the air: is Caesar Faison really coming back, and if so, what havoc will he bring with him this time? When actors like Anders Hove step back into a role after years away, it often sparks conversations about legacy, continuity, and what it means for the future of the show. Hove's portrayal of Faison was iconic not only because of the storyline beats written for him but also because of the sheer intensity and commitment he brought to the role. His piercing eyes, unsettling charisma, and ability to shift seamlessly between moments of chilling calm and explosive menace gave the character a unique edge. In many ways, Faison became the archetype of the soap villain who is always two steps ahead, the puppet master pulling the strings from the shadows. Fans who have been around since the height of Faison's reign remember vividly his endless torment of Anna Devane, his obsession with her, and the ripple effect his schemes created across Port Charles. Seeing Hove back on set naturally triggers memories of those infamous storylines and raises expectations for new drama that could rival or even surpass the past. The idea of Faison's return feels almost mythic, considering how definitive his end once seemed. When a soap chooses to kill off a character as notorious as Faison, it is usually done with great finality, giving audiences the sense that the villain's reign of terror has at last come to an end. But the beauty of daytime drama lies in its elasticity, its willingness to stretch plausibility and reconfigure timelines to bring beloved or infamous characters back into the fold. In the world of General Hospital, death has always been more of a suggestion than an unbreakable rule. Characters return from the grave regularly, often through elaborate explanations involving faked deaths, twins, or secret conspiracies. In Faison's case, the possibility of his survival has always lingered, precisely because he is the kind of mastermind who would anticipate his own downfall and plan accordingly. His history of elaborate disguises, hidden agendas, and global criminal connections provides fertile ground for a storyline that explains how he might once again walk among the living. What makes Faison's possible comeback so tantalizing is the timing. General Hospital is currently in a phase where legacy, family connections, and interwoven histories are more central than ever. The show thrives when the past collides with the present, when long-forgotten feuds or secrets resurface to shake up the lives of current characters. Faison's legacy continues through his children, and his shadow still hangs over those who were traumatized by his actions. The mere whisper of his name is enough to stir old wounds, particularly for Anna Devane, whose long and complicated history with him remains one of the most haunting arcs of her character. A re-emergence of Faison would not only impact Anna but also ripple across numerous storylines, affecting the likes of Maxie, Britt, if brought up in retrospective storytelling, and even Peter August, whose connection to Faison has already left an indelible mark on the canvas. With Anders Hove back in the building, the potential for explosive drama is enormous, and the writers would have countless avenues to explore. At the heart of the excitement is Anders Hove himself. While the character of Faison is unforgettable, it is Hove's performance that truly made him iconic. Actors who play soap villains often face the challenge of going big without becoming caricatures, of being menacing without losing depth. Hove excelled at this balance. He gave Faison an unpredictability that kept audiences glued to their screens, unsure of whether he would lash out violently, manipulate quietly, or charm his way into someone's confidence before betraying them. This unpredictability is what made him dangerous within the story world, but it also made him compelling for viewers. When an actor like that returns to the fold, it's more than just nostalgia, it's a promise of fresh tension, renewed stakes, and perhaps a reminder of what made the golden days of soap villains so captivating. Speculation is now running rampant among fans. Social media has lit up with theories about how Faison might come back and what his motives would be. Some believe he may return with a new disguise, echoing his old tactics of using elaborate masks and personas to infiltrate the lives of his enemies undetected. Others think his return might involve a long-laid plan finally coming to fruition, a scheme he set in motion years ago that is only now coming to light. There are even whispers that he could have been hiding in plain sight, using others as proxies to carry out his agenda while everyone assumed he was gone. In the unpredictable world of soaps, all of these scenarios are possible, and that uncertainty only fuels the anticipation. One of the most intriguing aspects of a possible Faison return is the generational impact it would create. Soap operas thrive on cycles, where the sins of the past echo into the present and force new characters to grapple with the legacies of those who came before them. Faison is not just any villain, he is a figure whose choices and obsessions altered the destinies of multiple families across Port Charles. His relentless fixation on Anna not only tormented her personally but also spilled into the lives of those she loved, putting Robert Scorpio, Max Scorpio, Robin Scorpio Drake, and countless others at risk. To this day, Anna carries scars from those encounters, scars that never truly healed despite her strength and resilience. If Anders Hove is indeed stepping back into his old role, viewers can expect those scars to be ripped open once more, sparking new drama that bridges the past with the present. The younger generation would also inevitably feel the effects of Faison's return. One of the most significant figures connected to him was Peter August, whose very existence brought a dark cloud over the canvas. Peter was a controversial character, disliked by many fans, yet undeniably tied to Faison's shadow. Even though Peter is no longer on the scene, his storyline leaves behind lingering questions and unfinished threads. The writers could easily use Faison's reappearance to reframe Peter's legacy, perhaps revealing hidden truths that Peter himself never knew. Did Faison have other children that no one has discovered yet? Were there backup plans and networks of allies Peter was never privy to? The possibilities are endless, and the return of Anders Hove would be the catalyst needed to ignite those unanswered questions. For Maxie Jones, the emotional weight of Faison's return would be overwhelming. She already endured immense heartbreak because of him, especially in connection with the death of her sister, Georgie, and the many ways her family's lives were disrupted by his schemes. Faison's direct hand in manipulating Britt and shaping the chaos surrounding Nathan West's life is another painful memory. Nathan's tragic death left Maxie widowed and devastated, and all of it ties back in some way to Faison's sinister grip. The idea that he could once again surface in Port Charles would threaten to undo all the progress she has made in moving forward with her life. For Maxie, it would not just be about confronting a villain from the past, it would be about protecting her children from the kind of danger she has seen firsthand, ensuring that history does not repeat itself. Anna Devane's response, however, would be the centerpiece of this potential storyline. Anna's long history with Faison is one of the most complex hero-villain dynamics in soap history. Faison's obsession with her was not rooted in genuine love but in control, domination, and possession. He sought to own her in every sense, refusing to accept her autonomy, her choices, or her rejections. Over decades, he stalked her, deceived her, and manipulated her life in ways that scarred her deeply. Yet Anna always fought back, refusing to let Faison define her or break her spirit. If Anders Hove has returned to bring Faison back into Anna's orbit, it would set the stage for an emotionally charged battle, one where Anna is no longer simply defending herself but also fighting for the future of those she holds dear. A modern-day confrontation between Anna and Faison would be even more poignant than in the past because Anna has grown stronger, wiser, and more resilient with age. She knows his tricks, she knows his weaknesses, and she understands the cost of underestimating him. But at the same time, the trauma he inflicted still lingers, making any encounter between them charged with intensity. From a storytelling standpoint, the reintroduction of Faison would also create opportunities for the writers to revisit other legendary characters connected to his history. Robert Scorpio, for instance, has been a central player in countless battles against Faison. Their clashes defined much of the action and intrigue that kept fans glued to the screen in past decades. Bringing Faison back could reignite Robert's purpose as a hero, drawing him into another round of cat and mouse with his old nemesis. Viewers would relish the chance to see the old guard rise up once again to face one of the greatest threats the show has ever known. The interplay between Robert, Anna, and Faison has always been electric, with high stakes and deeply personal undertones. To reawaken that triangle of conflict would be to tap directly into the heart of what makes General Hospital thrive: legacy, danger, romance, and resilience. Another layer to consider is how Faison's return could shift the balance of power among current villains on the show. Every soap thrives on multiple villains weaving their plots at once, but not all villains are created equal. Some operate in the shadows, some strike opportunistically, and some command global criminal networks that dwarf anything local characters can muster. Faison belongs to that last category. His influence and resources often seemed limitless, allowing him to threaten not just Port Charles but the world beyond it. Bringing him back would immediately elevate the stakes for any ongoing villain-centric storyline. Characters like Victor Cassadine, Cyrus Renault, or any other power players would suddenly find themselves in a new hierarchy, forced to reckon with a man whose reputation precedes him. The potential clashes between Faison and other villains would be just as entertaining as his interactions with the heroes, because watching egos and criminal empires collide always generates drama. It is also worth noting that Anders Hove's presence on set may not necessarily mean Faison is alive in the traditional sense. Soap writers are clever, and sometimes they use fan-favorite actors in unexpected ways. Faison could return in flashbacks, haunting memories, or even hallucinations, designed to torment characters grappling with guilt, trauma, or fear. While such a return would not have the same long-term impact as bringing him back to life, it would still give Hove the chance to once again slip into the role and remind fans why Faison is unforgettable. However, given the intensity of fan speculation and the way the news of Hove's sighting has spread, many are convinced that this is not just a cameo or short-lived flashback. This feels bigger, weightier, and more deliberate, a signal that the writers are setting the stage for something major. Of course, soap opera audiences know that anticipation is half the fun. Rumors swirl, spoilers leak, and fan theories multiply, creating a buzz that often sustains interest in the show even between major sweeps events. The conversation around Anders Hove being seen on set is exactly the kind of chatter that revitalizes a fanbase, sparking debates about which characters will be most affected, how the storyline might unfold, and whether the show can truly recapture the magic of Faison's past appearances. Fans remember moments like Faison kidnapping Robin, impersonating Duke Lavery, or unveiling one shocking scheme after another. These are the kinds of story beats that define soap history, the moments fans point to when they talk about why they fell in love with the genre in the first place. To even suggest that those kinds of moments might be returning is enough to keep people tuning in. The air on the set of General Hospital is always thick with a specific kind of energy, a palpable hum of manufactured drama and round-the-clock creation. But on this particular day, an unseasonably cool afternoon in Southern California, the atmosphere was charged with something else entirely, a potent mixture of nostalgia, anticipation, and a faint, collective shudder of apprehension. It was a feeling familiar to anyone who had spent significant time in Port Charles, a sensation that usually preceded a storm, or a shooting, or the return of a ghost. On this day, it was the latter. The ghost was named Caesar Faison, and the man bringing him back to life, Anders Hove, had just been spotted, calm and collected, near the wardrobe department. His presence, initially a quiet ripple among the crew, quickly became a wave of whispered confirmation. Faison is definitely returning. The phrase traveled from the soundstage to the writers' offices, from the craft services table to the dressing rooms, carrying with it the weight of decades of history. For the uninitiated, it might have seemed like just another plot point, another villain being wheeled out for a sweeps-month story arc. But for those who understood the intricate, often bloody tapestry of General Hospital, the return of Caesar Faison was an event of tectonic significance. It was not merely the reintroduction of a character, it was the reopening of a cold case that had defined countless lives, the reanimation of a darkness that had shaped the very soul of the town. Anders Hove, the actor tasked with once again inhabiting this uniquely menacing skin, moved with a quiet deliberation that belied the chaos his character inevitably sowed. To see him out of context, a tall, distinguished gentleman with a thoughtful demeanor and a gentle accent, was to witness the ultimate paradox of acting. This was the man who, for over 30 years, had been the embodiment of sophisticated evil, a master manipulator whose obsession with Anna Devane had fueled a trail of destruction spanning continents. His Faison was not a brute, he was a connoisseur of cruelty, a man who believed his actions, no matter how heinous, were justified by a love he perceived as transcendent. Hove's portrayal had always been a masterclass in subtlety and stillness, making Faison's sudden bursts of violence all the more terrifying. His spotting on set was not an isolated incident but the culmination of a series of narrative tremors that had been unsettling Port Charles for months. The recent turmoil surrounding Anna Devane, the lies, the secrets, the constant shadow of danger, now felt like a prelude. Anna's world had been destabilized, her past creeping into her present with increasing urgency. The reappearance of old adversaries like Valentine Cassadine, himself deeply entangled in Faison's web, and the unresolved mystery of the elusive pikeman operation, all pointed to a central, malevolent force pulling the strings. In the universe of soap operas, where coincidence is a currency and history is a loaded weapon, these were not random events. They were breadcrumbs leading back to the one man who had always considered Anna his ultimate prize. The significance of Faison's return cannot be overstated without delving into the deep, dark well of his history with the citizens of Port Charles. His first appearance in 1989 was not merely the introduction of a new villain, it was the arrival of a force of nature. He was established as a high-level operative in the global criminal organization known as the DVX, a counterpart and often adversary to the WSB, World Security Bureau, where Anna Devane and her then-husband, Duke Lavery, were agents. From the outset, his obsession with Anna was his defining characteristic. This was not a simple infatuation, it was a pathological fixation that would lead him to fake his own death, manipulate her into believing he was her ally, and even hold her captive in a remote cabin, forcing her to wear the clothes of his deceased sister, a chilling illustration of his warped psyche. Faison's crimes are a ledger of trauma. He was responsible for the presumed death of Duke Lavery, an event that haunted Anna for years. He was a key player in the saga of the Ice Princess, a weapon of mass destruction that became a cornerstone of General Hospital's forays into international intrigue. His reach extended into the lives of the Quatermains, the Cassadines, and the Spencers. He fathered a son, Henrik Faison, who would later become known as Peter August, a character whose own tragic life and villainous turn were a direct inheritance of his father's legacy. Faison's manipulation knew no bounds, he was a puppeteer whose strings were attached to generations of Port Charles residents. Perhaps most emblematic of his complex and toxic relationship with Anna was the fact that he was the biological father of her daughter, Robin Scorpio. This revelation, one of the most profound in the show's history, permanently bound Anna to her tormentor. It created a biological and emotional tether that could never be fully severed, a fact that Faison used as both a weapon and a perverse form of validation for his actions. Robin's existence was a miracle, but her paternity was a life sentence of complicated emotions for Anna, a constant reminder of the man who had violated her trust and autonomy in the most fundamental way. Faison's history is also a chronicle of resurrections. He was a man who seemed to cheat death with the same ease with which he orchestrated it for others. His deaths were often spectacular, yet his returns were even more so, each comeback more audacious than the last. He was shot, he fell from great heights, he was presumed dead in explosions, yet he always returned, like a phantom limb reminding Port Charles of a pain it thought it had amputated. This cyclical pattern of death and rebirth is a hallmark of the soap opera genre, but in Faison's case, it served a deeper purpose. Each return reinforced his mythic status as an indestructible embodiment of Anna's past trauma, a nightmare from which she could never truly awake. The news of Anders Hove's return, therefore, sent immediate shockwaves through the fandom. On social media platforms, the reaction was instantaneous and electric. Longtime viewers, who remembered Faison's reign of terror in the 90s, expressed a mixture of dread and exhilaration. #Faison Returns began trending within hours, accompanied by clips of his most memorable moments, his chilling monologues, his confrontations with Robert Scorpio and Duke Lavery, and the heartbreaking scenes where Anna was forced to confront the reality of Robin's paternity. For newer fans, who perhaps only knew Faison through referenced history or brief, more recent appearances, there was a frantic catching up, a diving into the digital archives to understand why this man's name was spoken with such reverence and fear. The speculation about the nature of his return was rampant. Was he truly alive, or would this be a ghost, a hallucination, a figment of Anna's guilt-ridden conscience? Given the show's recent exploration of Anna's mental state, her fears of developing the same degenerative disease that afflicted her mother, this was a compelling theory. Perhaps Faison was a manifestation of her deepest anxieties, a specter from a past she could no longer outrun. This approach would be a psychologically rich direction, allowing Finola Hughes, who plays Anna, to explore new layers of her character's trauma. However, the more prevalent and tantalizing theory was that Caesar Faison was, against all odds, physically alive. Yet again. The logistics of such a return are a classic soap opera puzzle. His last confirmed appearance ended with him being shot by his own son, Peter August, and his body was seemingly dealt with. But in Port Charles, a confirmed death is merely a suggestion. The body could have been switched. He could have been in a coma, hidden away by a loyal acolyte or even a rival who found him more useful alive than dead. Perhaps he had been pulling the strings of the pikeman operation all along, watching from the shadows as his grand design unfolded. This theory would make him the ultimate mastermind, the architect of the chaos that had engulfed Anna, Valentine, Laura Collins, and the entire town. The potential for storylines was immense. A living Faison would immediately become the nexus of multiple ongoing plots. His connection to Valentine Cassadine is particularly ripe for exploration. Valentine, who once worked for Faison and was manipulated by him for years, has been on a complex path toward redemption. The return of his former master would force him to confront the darkest parts of his own history, potentially jeopardizing his relationship with Anna and his hard-won place in Port Charles. Would he fall back under Faison's influence, or would he finally break free and become the hero he sometimes aspires to be? Furthermore, Faison's return would have profound implications for the legacy of his son, Peter. Though Peter is dead, his actions continue to reverberate. The mystery of what happened to Peter's body, and the child he fathered with Maxie Jones, could easily be tied back to Faison. What if Faison had orchestrated the disappearance of his grandson, seeing him as the next in his lineage of manipulation and power? This would create a desperate race for Anna, Maxie, and their allies to protect an innocent child from a monster's influence. The emotional core of the return, however, would undoubtedly be the confrontation between Faison and Anna. Their relationship is the stuff of soap opera legend, a dark fairy tale of obsession and resilience. Anna is no longer the woman she was in the 1990s. She is stronger, wiser, and has endured more loss and joy than she could have ever imagined. A confrontation now would be a clash between the personification of her traumatic past and the embodiment of her hard-won strength. It would be a test of everything she has learned and everything she has overcome. Faison's power has always lain in his ability to get inside Anna's head, to make her doubt herself and her allies. Now, the ultimate question would be whether Anna's current support system, her friendship with Laura, her complicated bond with Valentine, her love for her family, would be enough to armor her against his psychological warfare. Anders Hove's approach to this return is a subject of great interest. Known for his meticulous preparation and deep understanding of his character's psychology, Hove does not simply play a villain, he explores the humanity of a man who has chosen to embrace darkness. In interviews past, he has spoken about finding Faison's vulnerability, the wounded child beneath the polished, ruthless exterior. This complexity is what has elevated Faison from a mere mustache-twirling bad guy to one of daytime television's most compelling and enduring antagonists. Hove's performance is likely to bring new shades to the character, perhaps reflecting the toll of time and his own recent brush with death. Is Faison weakened, or has his isolation and suffering made him more dangerous than ever? The production surrounding his return would also be a carefully guarded secret. The writers and producers of General Hospital understand the value of a surprise, and the leaking of Hove's presence on set, while exciting for fans, would likely lead to increased security around story details. The first glimpse of Faison on screen, whether as a shadowy figure in a doorway, a voice on the phone, or a full frontal confrontation, would be crafted for maximum impact. The musical score, the lighting, the direction, all would be employed to remind the audience why Caesar Faison is a name that strikes fear into the heart of Port Charles. Beyond the immediate shock and narrative possibilities, Faison's return serves a larger purpose for General Hospital as a whole. In a television landscape that is increasingly fragmented, soaps rely on their history and their iconic characters to maintain a loyal viewership. Bringing back a villain of Faison's caliber is a statement of intent. It signals a commitment to the show's rich history, a willingness to mine its deepest lore for stories that have real emotional weight for long-term fans. It is a nod to the past while setting the stage for future drama. In a way, characters like Faison are the pillars that hold up the sprawling narrative structure of a show that has been on the air for over 60 years. They are the constants, the benchmarks against which the growth and change of the heroes are measured. The ripple effects of his return would be felt across the canvas. It would unite disparate characters in a common cause. The Cassadines, with their own tangled history with Faison, would be drawn into the conflict. the current agents of the WSB, and perhaps even figures like Jason Morgan, whose skill set is perfectly suited for dealing with a global threat, would be mobilized. It would create a town-wide crisis, reminding everyone that the personal is often political and that the ghosts of the past are never truly buried. As the day wore on at the General Hospital studio, the initial buzz surrounding Anders Hove's arrival settled into a focused intensity. The actors, the directors, the crew, all understood that they were not just filming another episode, they were participating in a piece of the show's legacy. The scripts being rehearsed, the scenes being blocked, were part of a new chapter in a story that began decades ago. For Finola Hughes, preparing for scenes that would undoubtedly be emotionally draining and psychologically complex, it was a chance to revisit the defining relationship of her character's life. For the producers, it was a strategic gamble, a belief in the enduring power of a great villain. And for Anders Hove, sitting in his dressing room, perhaps running lines or simply contemplating the journey ahead, it was a return to a role that has defined his career for a significant portion of his life. To step back into the shoes of Caesar Faison is to embrace a particular kind of darkness, to once again find the voice and the presence of a man who believes love and destruction are two sides of the same coin. His spotting on set was the first clue, the spark that ignited the fuse. The explosion, when it comes on screen, will not be a simple plot twist.